Have you ever heard of a town that vanished overnight? Not over years, not over months, but in a single moment of deafening silence. In 1932, a small, isolated town in Alaska named Portlock simply ceased to exist. Every single resident of it, man, woman, and child disappeared without a trace. When rescuers finally reached the desolate village days later, the only thing they found were footprints. Dozens of them leading away from the town, deep into the dark, unforgiving forest, and none of them ever came back out. This is the chilling, true story of the town that disappeared and the terrifying secret it left behind. Portlock was, at first glance, an idyllic fishing village nestled on the coast of the Kenai Peninsula, home to a community of around 200 people. It was a place defined by its remoteness, its quiet solitude, and the vast, dense forests that loomed over it like silent giants. The locals made their living from their rich salmon runs and by trading with neighboring communities. Life was simple, if not easy. But beneath the surface of this peaceful existence, something was wrong. Strange and unsettling events had been plaguing the town for years. Whispers of a darkness lurking just beyond the trail. Hunters, seasoned men who knew the woods like the back of their own hands, would venture out and never return. Fishing boats, once full of life and activity, would drift silently back to shore, completely empty, their decks stained with blood that had no explanation. The villagers began to speak in hushed tones about a creature in the woods, something unnatural. They described it as tall, impossibly so, and covered in thick, dark hair. They gave it a name spoken with fear and reverence. According to local lore, it was a terrifying hybrid, a half-man, half-beast that stalked the shadowed slopes of the mountains, its presence a constant, unspoken threat. The unease that had simmered for years finally boiled over into outright terror. It began with a group of woodcutters who went into the forest to work, just as they had 100 times before. But this time they didn't come back. Alarmed, the town organized search parties which combed through the dense, snow-dusted woods. What they found chilled them to the bone. They discovered a trail of massive footprints pressed deep into the earth. Prints that were nearly twice the size of any humans, yet disturbingly humanoid in shape. Their search ended in horror when they stumbled upon a body. It was one of the missing men, but he was mangled so brutally, so unnaturally, that he was almost beyond recognition. Panic gripped Portlock. "This wasn't a bear," they whispered. "This was the Nante." The fear was a contagion, spreading faster than any fire. Families, terrified for their lives, began to pack their few belongings and leave, not one by one, but in frightened groups, believing there was safety in numbers. They abandoned their homes, their livelihoods, everything they had ever known, fleeing into the harsh Alaskan winter. By the time the snows had fully set in, not a single person remained. Portlock was left to the wind and the shadows, a ghost town swallowed by the wilderness. Even decades later, as the world moved on, the story of Portlock persisted. No one dared to go back. No one dared to rebuild. The land was considered cursed. So, what really happened to the people of Portlock? What could cause an entire community to abandon their homes and flee into the unknown? The most grounded theory, of course, points to an animal. Perhaps an unusually large and aggressive grizzly bear was responsible for the attacks. It's a plausible explanation for a remote Alaskan village. But the local hunters, men who had faced bears their entire lives, insisted that the tracks were wrong. They were too large, The stride was too long, and they looked too much like a man's. This leads to the other theories, the ones that venture into the realm of the supernatural. Many believe the disappearances are tied directly to Alaskan folklore, to the ancient stories of the Nan. Could a creature thought to be a myth be terrifyingly real? Adding another layer of mystery. It's been rumored that even the US military has avoided the area. Reports claim that after several of their own personnel went missing during surveys near the Old Town site, they officially refused to station anyone there. To this day, satellite images of Portlock show the skeletal remains of collapsed cabins, a town frozen in time. And near the site of the old sawmill, some analysts have pointed out a strange, dark shape in the foliage shape that doesn't seem to belong. The story doesn't end in the past. In 2019, a team of paranormal investigators and explorers, drawn by the legend, ventured into the ruins of Port. They documented their experience, hoping to find answers. What they found was more fear. They claimed that as night fell, the forest came alive with unearthly sounds. First, a series of low, guttural howls that echoed through the desolate valley, followed by the distinct sound of heavy bipedal footsteps crunching through the undergrowth just outside their camp. They huddled in their tents, listening, too terrified to look outside. When the sun finally rose, they checked the motion-activated cameras they had placed around their campsite. Several of them had been smashed, torn from their mounts, and destroyed. One of the explorers, his face pale with fear, swore that in the final moments before dawn, he saw it a massive, dark figure standing motionless at the edge of the trees, just watching them. They packed their gear and left that very day, vowing they would never, ever return to the forest that warned them. And they had listened. To this day, the truth remains buried under a century of silence and snow. No one truly knows what force of nature or what unnatural force was powerful enough to make an entire town of people walk away from their lives and disappear into the forest forever. Was it a series of tragic, explainable animal attacks? Was it a case of mass hysteria that spiraled out of control in an isolated community? Or was it something else? Something far older and far darker that still wanders the mountains of Alaska, jealously guarding its territory. What do you think really happened in Port? Let me know your theories down in the comments. And if you're fascinated by creepy mysteries that blur the line between fact and folklore, make sure to follow and subscribe for more stories that sound unbelievable, but are terrifyingly real. Thanks for watching.